Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this very interesting little knife right here. This is the Olamic Cutlery Busker. This is a knife that I actually first got to see at Blade Show. There they had two prototypes of it exactly, and I stood there at the table and I flipped this little guy more than I probably should have. Let's just be real here, and as I was unable to steal one of them at the time and they weren't willing to take my damn money then, I spent a little while trying to convince them to take my money until it was finally ready, and they took my damn money, and so here it is. I picked this little guy up here, and this is a custom configuration of them. There are many blade shapes, etc. They don't all come with the little Timascus inlay here, which is a little bit dirty at the moment, but that's okay. But nonetheless, there are many versions of them, but this one is mine the way I configured it. First off, let's do a little size comparison for you real quick. This is not a very large knife. Right here it is against your Spyderco Delica, and so you can see, again, not a very large knife. In terms of blade, the blade length is substantially shorter than the Delica. Here it is next to your Spyderco Dragonfly, so it is only slightly longer in the blade than your Dragonfly here. Here it is against another smaller knife that I need to try and find here, the CRKT Pilar, which, a couple of people have made comparisons in terms of overall size, and yeah, size-wise, they are similar there, 100%, and, actually, I think, of course, I'm sorry, tradition's sake, here is the Ontario Rat #1 in your D2 steel. So anyways, this is not a very large knife. Then finally, a quick note on the configuration here. This is one specific blade shape. This is the Semper blade shape of the many available. The Timascus thing is aftermarket, as is the S-Back spacer, etc. But aside from that, this is just a vanilla Busker. Anyways, there we go. Let's go ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of this little, very interesting knife. So on the good side, first off, there's a lot of good here. The size of this guy, to me, though, it's one of my favorite aspects of it, because it is not very large, both in terms of in the pocket, but otherwise. I mean, blade length-wise, we're coming in at 2.5 inches exactly, which puts this legal in a bunch of different places. Places like Boston or Cleveland, you are absolutely good to go with the Busker, and that's very nice. And it's a small, high-end knife, and that's unusual. There are very few people making high-end knives, particularly in production, that are in this smaller size range, and so that's great. The other thing I'll highlight is that this is a profoundly non-scary knife. Very few people are going to look at this and get, oh my god, all the titter just because you take it out in the lunchroom. And for some people, that's going to be absolutely a great thing, and so the size to me is very good here. Next thing are the ergonomics. Even though this is a very small knife, it feels great in my hands. Given my hands are a little smaller than some, but you've got a full, let's see here. Basically, with the little finger choil on here, you've got a full 3.5 inches worth of grip length on there. And so this sits in my hand very nicely. As I'm actually using this guy, it feels great. And particularly given the fact that my finger can lock into this little area here, my thumb has this little ramped area, this is just not going anywhere in my hand. And so this feels very nice with a good balance and whatnot, even though it is very small. And so that's absolutely great. Next thing, you see me open this guy in a variety of ways probably. And there are many ways to open this knife. Probably the main one is to use it like a front flipper, where you can do the lateral front flip thing, where you use your finger to push it to the side there, pop open, or you can actually do kind of a different thing that I've never been able to do with any other front flipper, where you actually kind of do it from the front, where you use your thumb to press down this way and pop it out that way. It's a subtle distinction, but it's actually, I find that sometimes this front flipping method is a little bit rough on this, some tendon or something in there, whereas this is a much more natural feeling for me. But in addition to that, you can do the middle finger flick very readily. You can do, I don't know if I can do this. Yeah, unfortunately, I can't do this with the camera right here. There you go, I guess I got it. Where you grab onto the blade and then flick it out using the handle. You can, of course, two-hand open it. You can whack the tab up against something, which will pop the blade open. There are a bunch of different ways to open this, and that combined with the fact that this has a very nice front flip in action. Because look at how high the front flipper, the top of the lever is, so to speak, relative to the pivot. This is a very nice, you got good leverage there. And so it can have a very strong detent and still be a very nice front flipper. Add in the fact that it's also a very smooth knife. I mean, here, I'll just shut it here. It's the kind of that Olamic smooth. It's very I don't know how to put it. It's a glassy smoothness rather than like, oh my God, fall shutty. But all of this adds up to the fact that this knife has a fidget factor, which is just off the charts. This is a knife that, and this is completely ridiculous and shouldn't matter in any functional cutting tool review, but I'm going to say it because I'm ridiculous. This is a knife that you can sit there and just play with for hours and hours and hours as you're thinking about something else. I found myself at my desk, waiting for code to compile and just flipping this little guy around because it just feels great to do that. It's super satisfying. So that's, if you like a fidgety knife, oh my God, is this fidgety. Next thing, completely, well, more functional actually, is the blade on this guy is great. There are 3 different shapes available. There's this guy, the Semper, there's the Lago, which has a little bit more of a classic sheep's footy look to it, the Vampo, or is it Vampa? Either way, the Vampo, I think, has a little bit of a, like a hawk's bill to the front of it there. And there is a 4th one in the works, apparently. But I got this guy because it's thinnest at the top for pocketing. As you get this guy into your pocket, this part up here is relatively thin, which means it's even easier to get past your hand. This guy carries very nicely, by the way. Look at the angle of the clip. It just slides off to the side there. But anyways, the blade on this is very, very nice in a couple of ways. I mean, it's got nice details, like a nice little swedge and whatnot. But it is also an M390 steel. An M390 is one of the best, if not the best steels out there, which is very nice, and this cuts like crazy. I was initially concerned seeing the thickness of the blade stock, but it's a relatively tall grind. It's got a... It's like hollow-ish, but it cuts very, 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 very nicely, and that's something I appreciate very much. I don't have any problem cutting with this, even in weird situations, so that's great. Next thing, they made some nice changes from the previous Olamic lines. The biggest one is that they've changed the pivot screw out. Previously, it used a snakebite pivot that had 2 little holes in there, like on the Swish and the 247. They gave you a tool, so it was okay-ish, but still. It's nice to have an actual screw on this actual Torx, and so that's nice, and it is also no longer tactical. You can see here that this says Olamic Busker rather than Olamic Tactical, which is good, because if they printed tactical on this knife, it is proof that tactical has lost all meaning, so that's nice too. Another thing that they fixed is the clip, and I mean that relative to the Swish, whose really Achilles heel was the clip. This guy actually has a great clip. It gets nicely into the pocket, and it stays there very nicely with this little ball in there. This is just, and the tension on it, the springitude is great. I like this clip very, very much. One thing I'm going to actually highlight on the clip is if we look at the top here, you can see that they've actually milled out the inside of the clip bar there to add a little bit more flex to it, to give it more springitude. That's a nice little detail. And actually, well, let's talk about the rest of the nice little details here. I mean, in addition to things like comes with a nice case and whatnot, but it's got a bunch of little things on here that make it nicer. For instance, it has a detent ramp, as you saw in the disassembly video. Olamic is a big fan of prominent detents and strong detents, and so the detent ramp makes this knife very pleasurable to close and very easy to close with just one finger and without any real resistance, which is great. It has a lock bar insert here, as well as an over-travel stop. The insert itself is kind of stabilized, so it stays in position. Which is great, using 2 different screws. It is a serialized knife. Hopefully you can see, depending on the angle there. Come on, gotta find the right angle. There we go. Yeah, you can see right inside there that this is a serialized knife, which I always appreciate. It has some nice interior scalloping for the lock bar, which gives you easy lock bar access here. There is a nice chamfer on the inside of the opening hole there, as well as on the lanyard hole. And by the way, if we look at the lanyard hole here, hold on, let me get a light. You can see here that the lanyard hole, the backspacer is also present inside the lanyard hole with its anodization and everything, and it's just perfectly smooth in there. There we go. It's a nice little shot through with chamfers on the inside of the lanyard hole, the inside of the backspacer there, which is just great. It has a nice little floating backspacer sort of thing, which I always appreciate, with this file work. And then they were very nice. This inlays, it's great. I freaking love it because it gives the Damascus enough room to shine without completely dominating the knife. And they anodize the screws and standoffs to match without me asking for it. I mean, this knife, because of those beautiful details with the Damascus and whatnot, is incredible pocket jewelry, and, well, it's just really well thought through, and so those details bring me a lot of joy. The base price on this guy is actually pretty good, too. Although this one right here with the Damascus inlay and the backspacer is $595, which is a fair amount of money, but it's pocket jewelry. The base model of this guy, which uses standoffs as well as a blasted finish, so like this here, this is their lighter blast finish, is only $365. I mean, that's still a lot of money, but it's still M390, and the base model on this, honestly, if you look at other small, really high-end knives, you're looking at things like the Chris Reeve Small & Cosi, the Hoback MK Ultra, and that price, $365, is actually pretty damn competitive. So the base model is very reasonable, even if when you pimp it out like this guy, you pay a little bit more, and so I like that very much. I think the price is good here. One other thing that Olamic does really, really well, and that would probably be the great in any other review, in fact was the great in a Swish, is that they give you a lot of options. Some days, almost too many. Not only do you have 3, maybe 4 down the road blade shapes, you have multiple finishes, so different blastings and whatnot on both the blade and the handle. You can get them with all kinds of holes. You can get their, I forget what they call it, but they got a pattern where they just knock holes out of it everywhere and makes it like incredibly lightweight. I mean, they basically will let you customize anything. They have like an order form thing on the website, and they seem game for a bunch of things. I've seen these in a bunch of different configurations. Each one is like, oh, nice. Well, actually, it's not true. There are some I've seen that I don't love so much, but you know what? I'm sure it was bringing somebody joy. But I love that they're willing to do a lot of customization on this knife. This is a production knife through and through, and fundamentally, the platform for it is no different than the 365 base version, but they're willing to make it look to your taste, and I appreciate that very much. They're also apparently going to bring back the trade-in program. This is something they did for the 247, where basically if you buy the base model, down the road you can trade that in at some generous portion of the price, I think, and get a fancier version. So if you buy it originally in the bare bones version, you can swap it for something with Damascus or something. I'd love that, because I think it's a great way to buy the knife at a lower price to fall in love, or not. Probably fall in love, and then, move up to something fancier. So those options are a really wonderful thing, because it allows you to make a knife that is uniquely your own, but is still a production knife with still production knife support, parts, things like that. So to me, all of that is the good, is that it's got a lot of good options for you. The base price is actually pretty solid relative to your higher-end, smaller competition. The details on it are just everywhere. It's a really well thought through knife. I mean, even look at the chamfer jumping up around the screw holes here. Just nice. But anyways, lots of details. It's got a very nice clip that works very well, which is good. The pivot screw is no longer a snake bite. It's just a torque screw. It's got a very nice blade that cuts things very effectively. The fidget factor on this guy is absolutely off the charts. It's very, very smooth with a nice front flip in action with this nice high lever on here. You get many opening methods, good ergos, and a very legal and frankly, non-scary size. So to me, all of that has been the good. To me, what's great, though, about this knife is going to be the uniqueness, because really, there isn't anything else like this out there. The size is pretty uncommon to start with, especially on the high end. I mean, yeah, lots of people make smaller knives. I mean, you can get a CRKT Pilar for $25 if you want to. But the thing is, in a really well-finished knife, there aren't that many people doing high-end small knives. So that's the size itself is a little odd. But then to throw in a front flipper, and specifically to throw in one that's super high like this, which makes it just a pleasure to use, and better than, frankly, any other front flipper I've used in that domain, at least easier in a lot of ways. To have this many different ways to open it, the fact that it is super people safe, and there's nothing else out there that is reminding me of this knife. I carry this, and it's just like, this is a unique little beast. And in a world where the knives just blend together after a little while, particularly when I've got a bunch of them on my table at any given moment, this is kind of an outlier. And so I appreciate that very, very much. And you can make it even more so with the customization. So that uniqueness, the fact that there's really just not anything else out there on the high end or frankly on the low end with some of these features, that versatility, that is what's great about this. This is its own little thing, and I love that very much. So on the bad side, I actually worked very hard on this section because I don't want to. Anyways, there were a couple of things that I was able to identify that are not something I'm loving. For instance, this little area right here. You can see here that this has the lock bar kind of slides over here, and that's got a little corner to it, and then this has a little corner that's sticking out to the side here. I do wish that these little corners were rounded a little bit more than they are. Here, I'll try and zoom in a little bit just to show you that. The only reason I say that is because if you choke up on this guy, if you use the little finger choil here, and I consider this to be a finger choil, even though I don't think they necessarily do, those can dig in a little bit to your hand if you're really bearing down. But I can see that being a bigger issue if you have bigger fingers than I do, but still, that's one thing I'd like to see them change. The grind on this guy feels slightly over-polished. What I mean by that is that these little lines get a little bit lost. I feel like somebody had this at a buffing wheel, maybe kept it a little long at the fair. I mean, in the watch domain, having very crisp grind lines is generally considered to be a good thing, and here they're a little bit weaker. This is the level I'm nitpicking at here. Then finally on the bad side, and maybe the worst thing, is that the centering is a little bit off, maybe. I mean, maybe like half a millimeter or so, and it's a little bit fiddly as you put it back together. There are some ways that you have to kind of do things, but again, I'm not 100% sure, like I was measuring earlier. But those are the bad things I can come up with here, is that the centering is a little bit fiddly, maybe slightly off. It is slightly over-polished in terms of the grind, and I do want a little bit more rounding just right here, such that when you're choking up with the finger choil, there is not the possibility of a hot spot off of the top of the lock bar in the back of this here. That's the level I'm nitpicking at. Ugly-wise, honestly, I got nothing. This is just a really well-done knife, and so we can just go into the final conclusion here. The final conclusion, of course, being, sorry, got distracted for a sec. This is just a really great knife. Olamic has 100% knocked this knife out of the park. They have made a knife that is, at least in my estimation, very, very attractive, particularly with the extra pocket jewelry sorts of features I put on here. But it's also very well made. It's also very, very, very fidgety, but it's also a usable tool. This is a knife that, I mean, certainly there are times when 2.5 inches isn't going to be enough for, you know, cutting tasks and things like that. But in my everyday life, this has been more than usable enough for pretty much anything I've had to do as I've carried it. I carried this guy a fair amount already. It is also small enough to be very legal and very non-scary, which is just a great thing. It is also very ergonomic, and it is just unlike anything else on the market, both in terms of being a very small, high-end knife. It's a front flipper that is just uniquely good in that way. The options here, I mean, it's very nice. And sure, there are a couple of little details that they can fix pretty quickly. A little bit, a little less aggressive buffing, if they even want to fix that, is not a big deal. A little chamfer here, and then make sure that there's not that maybe half a millimeter of center. I don't freaking know. But the thing is, and this isn't going to be a great choice for a budget-conscious collector. I can say that much for sure. $365 is a lot of money to spend on a knife. And of course, if you're if you're torn between this and the Cold Steel 4MAX, this is probably, this is not a big, hard-use blade, but you know that. And overall, I mean, I'm trying very hard to nitpick here, but holy crap, is this knife good. I may be a little biased here because this is honestly about as Nick Shabazz as knives can get. What I mean by that is that this is small, unintimidating pocket jewelry with details and great materials that actually serves as a functional cutting tool and is nice and fidgety. There's not that much more that I could ask for personally. But the thing is, I am yet to talk to anybody who doesn't like theirs. A bunch of folks have gotten them, and as far as I know, everybody's been enjoying them. And you know what? For the base price, this is blowing the competition out of the water in terms of small, high-end knives. And frankly, there's not that much competition available in small, high-end knives anyways, particularly if you limit it to easily available production. And so for me, this is just a shining freaking gem. This is a knife that I not only really like, but I absolutely love. It is the best small production high-end knife that I'm aware of, and it is further proof that Olamic is just at or near the top of the high-end knife game. And this is, 100% a strong, strong contender for Knife of the Year for 2017. This is really, really good. And so if you are considering getting one of these guys and you think that it meets your very specific needs for a smaller, gentlemanly, fidget factor 5,000 sort of knife, then just do it. It is absolutely great. It's spectacular, and I don't see you regretting it, that is. Because if you're looking for the very specific things that this knife has to offer, then I think that this little Busker will absolutely perform for your money. Busker joke? No? All right. Anyways, I hope this has been interesting to you. Really, really good job here, Olamic. Well freaking done. And have yourselves a good one, everybody. Bye now.